I think right now with everything we're going through, there's a lot of resilience needed, myself included, where, you know, there might have been a project you're working towards that has now been like taken away from you. There, you know, a bunch of students, suddenly their final years in, whether it's middle school or high school or in university, suddenly just evaporated in front of their eyes. Parents are now struggling to like work with their kids in the background. There's just like, there's so many unforeseen circumstances. I know for me, I just came off a 20 stop tour with the Believe Initiative, the youth organization that I founded. And we were supposed to be going back to each one of those schools. And I was really worried about the strikes being the reason why we might be able to go back into the schools. And it's like, now I feel silly for even worrying about that. I'm like, that was the least of my worries of like what's actually happening now. So yeah, we're, like you said, kind of all in this together. And it's a roller coaster ride. For people who don't, I recognize some of the names here, like Robin Campbell. Hey, Robin. But for people who don't know me, as Ali mentioned, I am an Olympic 400-meter hurtler. And my story, like, you know, try to give a quick 5-minute version of a decade of a career, but it started in high school. I selected every single sport. I just wanted to find something I could be good at, and ended up trying out for basketball, volleyball, badminton, soccer, you name it. I tried out and I got cut from every single one of the teams. And so I just thought I wasn't athletic. And finally in the springtime, track and field came around. Suddenly I'm able, like, I find hurdles, I fall in love with the sport. My coach, Dave Hunt, he was really, you know, the biggest source of belief in me. And then that helped me believe in myself. And I really owe the path I've now taken thanks to him. And then suddenly the Olympics became a possibility after many, many years of training. And the year before, I got an injury. I got a stress fracture in my femur. So a stress fracture is like a deterioration of your bone from the inside out. It eventually leads to a crack. And I set out for what was supposed to be 3 months and ended up taking 9 months. And so that was devastating. And I would live and breathe by the way my leg felt when I woke up in the morning. And if it was good, it was going to be a great day. And if it was bad, it was like miserable. I'd be like crying in an instant. And it was exhausting. But by the time I finished that 9 months, I felt like I had developed strength inside of myself that I didn't know that I had. And so even though making the Olympic Games after sitting out for 9 months seemed nearly impossible, I decided to get the word believe tattooed onto my wrist, which people can kind of see. And I said, when I make the Olympic Games, I'm going to put the rings underneath here. And it was an epic roller coaster ride. And 6 months later, I win the Olympic trials. I go to the Olympic Games and I finish the tattoo and I put the Olympic rings underneath the believe exactly where I said I would. And that was great. And that was fun. And, you know, I was like, oh my gosh, believing in yourself works. And I started standing on stages and talking about that. But then 4 years later, the Olympics comes back around. And I had now won a medal at the Pan Am Games, and that proved to myself and started to create a bit of a buzz around the idea of like, okay, what could I do at the Olympic Games then? And I really felt like I could make a run for being in the Olympic final and then maybe winning an Olympic medal. And so with that mindset, I'm like doing everything I can. I'm in the best shape of my life. And 2 months before the 2016 Olympic trials, I have a workout on a day I should have never worked out because my hamstrings were super tight. But I ignore all of that feeling and I choose to work out anyways because I was so scared of not doing everything I could in order to make this dream come true. And so I fight through the workout and I'm like halfway through, and my coach, his name is Bob Westman, who I ended up working with after Dave Hunt. And Bob was like, you know, Sarah, you look tired today. Like, let's shut it down here. And I was like, no, I have to do everything. Like, it's the only way to be good. And I end up tearing my hamstring when I tell him like, no, I'm going to keep going. And so when I tear my hamstring, I know it's bad and I do everything I can to rush back. But then I only get back to about 90% before on the day of the 2016 Olympic trials, it was like, I didn't know if I could make it. And so being a 4-time national champion, I thought, okay, well, if top 3 make the games, like hopefully I can still rely on some of that. Like there's some buffer here. And I like gave the race everything I had, like was fighting towards the line. And I ended up getting fourth and missing qualifying by half a second. And I was devastated because talking about unforeseen circumstances and the state that we're in right now, at no point in those 4 years did I ever imagine that I wouldn't be at the 2016 Olympic Games. Like, there was no question in my mind. And I'm sure it's what some athletes are experiencing right now with the news that broke yesterday. And what I think is really great is that we can like kind of live in a world of empathy right now where like we're all going through this. And it's really, really hard. And I know for me in that moment, like I remember leaving the track after realizing I wasn't going to go to the Olympic Games, and I couldn't go into the house we were staying at, because to me that made it final, that made it official. Like I wasn't going to the Olympic Games. And so instead of going into the house, I just kind of like opened the car door and fell onto the driveway and like laid in fetal position, just crying and crying. And I felt like I had wasted 4 years of my life. And, you know, through multiple rounds of reflection, and I actually took a year off. And in that year was when I founded the Believe Initiative. And I'm so glad I took that time, because it taught me that you don't build self-belief through achievements. Because the whole previous 4 years, I was thinking about how, you know, if you believe in yourself, you achieve your goals. That's what I did in 2012. So this must be true. And then I was like, oh my gosh, have I been lying to people when it didn't happen in 2016? And I now realize that it's not that you build self-belief through achievements. It's that you build self-belief through action. And I think that's where we all have the capacity right now of like, when this massive unforeseen obstacle has shown up in all of our lives, that we can build self-belief, we can build resilience through action. And so my kind of like philosophy and structure around this kind of comes from a 3-step process. And I have about like 10 tactics that I use kind of, you know, mixed amongst the 3 steps. And the 3 steps are 3 C's. It's to calm, control, and course. And so with calm, it's the pause and process. Like when something bad happens, you know, news of like schools closing, the reality of like, yeah, having businesses like shut down or completely pause, or just like everything changes. Pause and process. And what that means is to like not think about the what ifs, like not, okay, if the business closes, what does that mean? And that means that I'm at this point and the kids are gonna like, I'm not gonna be able to feed them, and you know, X, Y, Z. Like, it's not those. It's simply the facts. It's the, okay, what is my reality? What are the things that are going on for me right now? And like, just what do I know about this scenario? And I think really removing interpretation is the biggest thing about the calm factor. And so we can really think about this of like around the idea of mindfulness. What is in this present moment? And you can exercise that skill through like every app known to man out there right now that's like a mindfulness app. And you can use that. And then similarly, like take an audit of whatever's happening for you, of like pause, process, like what are those facts? The second thing is that control piece. And so really you want to find a sense of control, because it can be very challenging when you feel like things are happening to you rather than being in the driver's seat and recognizing that absolutely, like there are things happening to all of us where our hands are tied. Like we don't have a choice in some of those things, or we don't feel like we have a sense of control. But the thing that we always have a choice around is the mindset that we adopt when facing that next challenge. So, you know, you mentioned how I was on the Amazing Race Canada, and it's like, even in something like that, where like the clues are preset, like challenges, I don't have a choice over those. And I can't just change my partner. Like Sam and I are in this together and we had to stick it out. Like, and even in something like that, where it feels like every variable is taken care of already for me, and it feels like my hands are tied, even in that, I have a choice in the mindset I choose to adopt when approaching that next challenge. And so how can you find that in your life? And something that was brought to me by a friend of mine, and I know Jane would know him, Giovanni, I don't even know how to say his last name, but he runs a program called Archangel. And I was on a call with him the other day, and we were talking about how the Chinese symbol for crisis is two symbols. And if you split those symbols apart, then their meaning in isolation is like completely contrasting. So the two symbols together mean crisis, but in isolation, one of them means danger and one of them means opportunity. And so how cool is that? That like, that is our reality right now. Like we are in a crisis, and yes, there is some danger. And that's why we're all taking the precautions we are. And that's why we're all staying at home. And that's why we're doing what we need to do to help flatten that curve. But then there's also this like massive other side of opportunity of like, what seeds can you plant right now? Like, I know for me, I haven't had a minute to think about what I want the Believe Initiative to grow into. And like, how can I use more of the skills and things I've built as an Olympic athlete and find a way to create more impact and provide value to more people. And I really wanted to think about some of those things, but you're constantly working to survive. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir over here. And so now suddenly I'm provided that opportunity to do that. And so what is that opportunity on this side of crisis for you? And what seeds can you be planting right now that can flourish when this is lifted? And then the last thing is course, like I said. And this is really about finding what is that course that you need to take to get you from your starting line or your reality or wherever you're at right now to whatever that finish line is for you. And what's really important to note about that is like, that doesn't mean take the same vessel you were on before. Like you might have to change that vessel, because for me, I was doing events. I was like keynote speaking all over the place and being in schools and being on corporate stages, and there's no events for a very long time. And so if I can actually remove the way I was delivering impact from my sense of identity and instead say, my purpose and my mission is to help people build resilience and build self-belief. Is the only way to do that through keynote speaking and at events? No, there's so many other ways. And so like, how can I change my vessel to still create the same impact? And so regardless of like who you are, or what your business is, what is your business intended to do? And then what is the alternative vessel or the different way that you can think about the impact you're trying to create or the outcome you're trying to have? So, I'm running a resilience workshop on Wednesday, one at 10 a.m. and one at 1 p.m. Eastern time. I don't know where people are in the world, or Canada at least, should all be home. But if you want to join, I'm going to go through, I know today we only have 30 minutes, but I'm doing a 1-hour workshop on these detailed tactics under each of these 3 buckets of calm, control, and course. Because in course, one of the things I talk about is finding your hurdle 1. And for me at Pan Am Games, I won a silver medal, as I mentioned earlier, but before the final, so let me reframe this. During the heats, it was incredibly windy. So the qualifying rounds, incredibly windy. And as a hurdler, you have a certain stride pattern that you're used to. And so for me, I would usually try to get my bad leg in the front half, bad leg. My coach would hate for me to call it that, but you have different lead legs. So I would use my bad leg on the front half of the race. And then as I would get tired, I would have to add an extra step. So then I would get my good leg coming home. Now, because the wind was so strong in the qualifying rounds, that it was actually pushing me back further. So because I had to add an extra step because the wind was so strong, I was getting my good leg in the front half and my bad leg on the way home. But on the way home is when you're getting tired and you're not as like strong and your core is like giving out. So it actually can be very detrimental. And so for the final, I asked my coach when we were still together, I was like, should I be switching my blocks? Like, should I force my other leg back? So that way if the wind is strong, I still get my bad leg at the front and then my good leg on the way home. And he's like, it's not as bad today. You should be fine. Like, just stay the course, like do what we've practiced all year. And I'm like, okay, like I can do this. And I get on the track. Starter like lets us do our run out. I do my run out and the wind is again so strong. And so I get my good leg to hurdle 1. And I'm like, no, this is not the plan. Like, it's supposed to be better today. And then the starter's like, okay, like blows the whistle, everyone behind your blocks. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to switch my blocks. And I start like looking up into the crowd. Like I'm like trying to find my coach to be like, hey, like, should I switch them? Like, I just want reassurance of like, yes, do that. But I couldn't find him amongst the like sea of faces. Plus I'm like kind of freaking out because the starter's already said behind your blocks. And when I don't see my coach, Bob, I was just like, whatever, I'm going to switch my blocks. And so I changed my feet, my starting line, minutes before potentially one of the biggest races of my entire life. And because I've trained so many hours of getting my bad leg to hurdle one, I now know that like when I've switched my blocks, I'm gonna have to change my stride pattern, and I have to just keep thinking like left leg, left leg, left leg, because my brain's trained the complete opposite way. And so all I was thinking about in one of the most important races of my life was exactly what I needed to do at hurdle one. And the gun went off. I'm just saying to myself like left leg, left leg, left leg. I get over hurdle one with my left leg, and everything falls into place from there. And so, you know, I know our realities are different, and the things that we're all doing are like so different. But like, what is your hurdle one? What is the one thing you need to do today or this month or during this quarantine that's going to set you up for hurdle 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Because just because you get over hurdle one doesn't mean there's going to be no more hurdles. Now you're good to go. But you might do something today to set yourself up that you can like endure hurdle 2, 3, 4, 5 with more resources, more tools. So yes, as I mentioned, that's like one of the tips and tactics and things that I'll go over in my resilience workshop on Wednesday. It's at 10 a.m. and at 1 p.m. You can, if anyone's interested in signing up, you can go to resilience-inc.com and you can register there. And I'll go through more of these in detail because I know we only have 9 more minutes and I want to give time for Q&A. So when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, or you have lost your focus temporarily, what do you do? So thanks for that question, Jonathan. For me, I know like when I was training, I would get very overwhelmed by thinking about like where I need to be in a month from now or 2 months from now. If like I'm trying to make the Olympics or I'm trying to hit a standard or I want to win a certain race. And something I would do is I would be super intense about journaling and logging my workouts and like, what was the workout? What were the times I ran? How did I sleep? How was I feeling? What was that outcome? And it allowed me to track progress and very concretely show myself a story that I might not be able to convince myself without proof. And so in the case where like right now, maybe things are feeling overwhelming, I would encourage you to either write a gratitude journal, like things that are going well or things that are progressing, or what are the steps that you are taking? Like we said earlier, like you planting those seeds right now, they're going to allow you to achieve success down the line, because then you'll be able to very clearly articulate to yourself, okay, where was I and how far have I come? And that takes some effort for you committing to that path. But if you're able to do that, we can sometimes quiet that voice of self-doubt or anxiety that can have us feeling like we can convince ourselves a story of like, that's completely untrue, where you're like, oh my God, everything's terrible, I'm screwed and the world's ending. And so for me, it really came from an element of journaling. And I think, it takes on a gratitude lens, but it can also take on the like tangible, like action steps you are taking towards a certain goal. Shanna said, who is your hero and why? I think for me, it's been Perdita Felician. She is such a champion. Like she truly, like, one, in the literal sense, she's a 10-time national champion, which I'm not even sure. I don't know who else has ever won the national championships 10 times. And she is a person who was obviously favored to win favored to win the Olympic medal in 2004. Just coming off winning the world championships the previous year. And then she fell in 2004. And then she like stayed hungry and trained and got back. And in 2008, she got injured. And so she couldn't compete at the Olympics. She ended up broadcasting, and that started like, part of her career that she's doing now. But then, after 2008, she got back on the track and she stayed hungry and like kept winning national championships and trained up into 2012 and was again one of the best in the country in 2012. And the 2012 Olympic trials, she false started and she again didn't get to go to the Olympic Games. And so it was just insane to watch this career of like this athlete with so much potential, have her medal hopeful chance. She falls, then she's injured, then she falls start. It's like insane to see how many times like she put in so much effort and she like never got to see the outcome or the impact of that. And yet she was still one of like the most positive people and like so committed to her goals. And I just think she's like one of the brightest lights, and really respect for her for everything that she's done in her career. So she's a big one for me. I received Can Fund in 2015, just after I qualified for the Pan Am Games, which was awesome, because it was just nice to feel like, you know, more people believed in me. And I think sometimes, you know, as we can all feel on the roller coaster ride, sometimes that you get into your own head and you think you're not good enough or not worthy or whatever. And so I think having the community of support to feel like, okay, like you see it too, like it's not just me, like you think I can do this too. That's obviously an intangible of really being able to reach your goals, is just like having that support and feeling like you have those people that are standing behind you. And then of course, like the ability that, you know, the financial resources provides many athletes to just be able to go to training camps and qualify. Like in my case, like I had just qualified, but there's athletes that don't have those resources and are fortunate to like then be able to use those towards getting to those goals. And so I know my friends and a number of them have been able to use Can Fund as a massive stepping stone to reaching their big goals.